Bucks, you're back in the coach's box for the first time and certainly not the result you wanted up against the Gold Coast, losing by 56 points. At times it got out to 85 points in the third quarter. What's been the fallout from what was a pretty disappointing performance from your boys down at Geelong?
Yeah, no, you're right, mate. It's not one I want to dwell on that much, or that we want to
I've got 5 minutes here in the rundown for it, so we can...
I'll give you 5 seconds. No, we've done a review. Actually looked at a little bit of Fremantle at the end of it today, so we are looking forward already. But no, there's... there was some outlier numbers in that performance for us, like the turnover scoring, a little bit of pressure around the ball, and we gave the ball back to them, world record 42 turnovers in our back half. So we shot ourselves in the foot quite a bit and fueled the Suns' press. But yeah, there's a few elements for us to work on.
Up close, you're only just recently back in the box. I mean, we were there live. They looked powerful. Powerful
unit. In the front half, weren't they?
In the front half, but across the ground, but particularly in the front half. Unfortunately, you're coaching the backs, but I was really taken aback by how powerful they were.
Yeah, no, we knew we were under no illusions of who we were going to come up against, and they've had some elite players for a long time. Miller and Anderson were two that we targeted. Petracca was one that got off the hook against us. Humphries started the game really well. We were relatively in the contest for the first 20 minutes, but they were able to hold sway, especially in the clinches. The ground ball through the midfield between the arcs. They were able to get a hold of us, and we're not the only team that they're going to do that to. They were as clean and hard inside as any team will be this year, and they were able to display that consistently throughout the first 3 quarters in particular.
Can we just look at Christian Petracca? So we've got some of his positioning, his highlights. It was unbelievable. It was his highest rated game of his career, actually. So, and obviously he had that grand final for Melbourne in 21. So he played, now this is not new to him, this position of playing that sort of forward of the stoppages. He played a bit deeper at times, but it was sort of that attacking midfielder, if you want to call him that, and he was dynamic, wasn't he, with the 30-odd touches. He had 6 clearances, 3 goals, he had 10 inside 50, so was spotting targets. But that's going to be a really dangerous position, Bucks, for him all year if he gets that amount of space forward to the stoppage. Yeah, well, what I'd suggest is all of these are contest forward, and it could look very different if you look after the contest itself. But, the Suns were able to win those more often than not and got from the inside to the outside. Even when we got the ball in our hands, they pressured really well in there. So if you're leaking forward, it's going to be good if you're winning those contests. It can be exposed the other way, but we weren't able to do that.
It's an incredible stat line there. You look at the 2 names that are above him are both club champions, and the captain of the football club, Gary Ablett and Noah Anderson, the 4th highest rated game from a Sun. It makes you wonder, Lee, about Melbourne and Christian Petracca and the fallout of even Clayton Oliver coming out of there as well.
Well, they two together. Petracca was outstanding and Oliver was outstanding, and they've just struggled at Melbourne the last year or two. So you got to it reflects badly on what Melbourne was. I don't know what they are now. That might be different, but what they were, those 2 players had become pedestrian, hadn't they? And then all of a sudden they've gone to new clubs and set the world on fire. It's only one round, I know, but nevertheless it reflects badly.
Is anyone more at fault then, Melbourne or the two players? Because they're a part of the culture and then they've left. And from all signs we've seen in Melbourne early is that they I think they're going to win more games potentially than they lose this year under Stephen King. Who would you place the blame on?
Well, that's a good question. All I'm saying is the Melbourne fans would be saying to themselves, watching Petracca and Oliver, how come they weren't doing that for us last year? So it always just reflected glory, and the reflected fault goes on to the Melbourne situation.
I think it's a little bit part system and setting up the player to prosper, and off the back of what Brownie's saying. So a lot of the stuff that Brownie showed was Petracca at stoppage, the ability to get forward, and I think we'll just show a little bit here on how the system allows the player, and you'll be very familiar with this system, allows the player to be able to perform and effectively catch the opposition out. So Petracca starts in the midfield, and Miller, you can just see there as the high half forward. So a couple of things here. O'Shea Mullen, I think in this occasion, is following Miller. He needs to be the defender that communicates and looks over to see Petracca is now forward. And what do I do with Miller? Primarily, you want to hand it over, but right now, they've got a +1 ahead of the ball. Now, is that risky? Yes, because Geelong have a +1 in and around the ball, but as they did on a lot of occasions on Friday night, they were fierce around the contest and had the ability to turn the ball over, which meant that their advantage forward really came into play. And even that, the boundary throw in the right-hand side that Brownie showed, Miller came right up to the stoppage. So I think the question to come for sides that play Gold Coast is, do we allow them to have one extra at the stoppage, provide a little bit more defensive stability, or do we go all the way up, hope that our pressure and our tackle sticks, and then we can try and win the ball back there? Because what I think the Gold Coast forwards also did is they separated really well. So you see when Petracca bursts through, there is just so much space and so many options for them to use.
So Dustin Martin played a similar role for you. Was there an element of rolling the dice of getting that +1 forward through your era?
I think you've also got to think about where's the value. A player forward of the ball in a 5v6 or another player at the stoppage, so Geelong having the extra player at the stoppage in what is maybe a 7v8. So that player gets soaked up in the contest, and the value of Christian Petracca, or it was Dustin Martin, being able to get forward there gives you a player ahead of the ball in what is a lot more of an uncontested possession. So that is the Damien Hardwick.
We would love that. You used to say that to us all the time, didn't you?
What's that?
What's the value of the extra number?
Well, we often talk about, 2 will beat 1, 3 will beat 2, 4 will beat 3, but when you get 5 versus 6, then it's a bit like the sixth person might not be much advantage, and that's where you're talking about getting Petracca as the sixth person in a congestion, get out in a bit of space, let the other five fight it up. But as you pointed out, if they win the stop, Geelong win the stoppage, then they've probably got more time to go forward. So it is a matter of you've still got to win.
Just take us back, Dimmer, when it became apparent that he was gettable, why did you want him?
We sort of felt there's some areas in our game that when we are looking to play the very best teams, there's a little bit of a shortfall, and that was in particular in the forward half part of the ground. And there's certain players that we looked at that we wanted to try and attract to our footy club, and obviously Christian was on top of the list, and we had some really productive conversations, and then it sort of basically came down between ourselves and Adelaide, and so we knew we were a 1 in 2 chance. And then when he called me, I still remember, it's like one of those days where, when the space shuttle has, sort of incident and all that sort of stuff. I'll always remember when Christian Petracca rang me. I was on the couch watching, I don't know what I was watching, some show, but I'll remember exactly where I was. And, I was jumping up and down whilst trying to still talk on the phone. So it was very exciting for me.
Did you think, so part of this is his own personal triumph through what he's been through for a couple of years. Did you feel like he'd been run down in the broader football world for whatever motivations and whatever reason?
Yeah, not speaking particularly about Christian, but it can happen with players that have been at a high level for a long period of time and are highly regarded or sought after by the public. So it can become slightly exhausting and monotonous. So I think, for Christian to come up here to purely focus on his footy, the media scrutiny is not the same up here. It's building, we understand that, but I think what he could do is he could sort of settle into his own routine, his own environment up here and play some really good footy, as we emphasised, or as we saw on the weekend. So I think it's been a change as good as a holiday. So it's been a real positive for us and Christian thus far.
So the value of happiness within a player, I think, is, and there was this great juxtaposition between Christian, who came to your club, and Bailey Humphrey, who, and you can tell us differently, but, explored some options back home in Melbourne for whatever reason. You've got Christian into a real happy space, and that is the best thing. But you've also, I think, as impressively, been able to have Bailey Humphrey come back in, and you can tell us whether it was real or not, but come back in and been happy enough to play the sort of footy that complemented the two of them. I mean, he was, as much as we lauding Christian, Bailey was the man in the first 15 minutes to set the thing up.
Yeah, he was electric, wasn't he? And, that's why we love him. And look, he had some things that he had to deal with when he went back to Melbourne, and we can understand family is very, very important, but we felt we could help Bailey through those situations, but more importantly, get him to understand that he can do things, but also ask for help along the way, and doesn't have to deal with these things alone. And, he's a young man. He's 21 years of age. So, anyone that has got is distanced from their family always wants to be relatively close. But what we do know is Bailey's one of those guys. We love having him around the footy club. He's infectious, the way he plays, the way he goes about his business. And he's just, he's one of those people, as soon as he walks into the room, you just smile. You know you're going to have a good conversation with him. And look, we've got a really, really strong relationship, and we're very respectful of that and understand that. But he certainly won't be going anywhere this year or in the not too distant future, as far as I'm concerned.